Welcome to Lift Your Legacy. My name is Jacob Rupp, father, husband, and rabbi. And each week we bring you an inspiring person or message to help you unlock your inner potential and create change that will impact the future. Thank you for listening, and let's get to it. I am so thrilled today to have Michael Blank, who is an entrepreneur, investor, author of the book Financial Freedom with Real Estate Investing, coach, and leading authority on apartment building in the United States. He also has a podcast, which is fantastic. So Michael's got an amazing story because he's really gone the gamut in his business, from being successful, having a great job, to reading one book which changed his life forever, losing everything, and then really through his faith and through his desire to contribute, rebuild himself and build himself into the authority today, and has been able to help many, many, many other people build and create financial freedom for themselves. This is not just a business podcast. This is a life podcast. This is a faith podcast. This is a podcast that speaks about how do you keep it all together when things fall apart? And then how do you develop your vision that you can have this massive contribution to the world and not just take care of yourself and your family? So prepare to take notes. This is really, really fantastic. Please let me know, interact, afterwards the show, reach out to me through social media. Tell me what you liked about it, how I could better serve you, how Michael could better serve you. And I profoundly appreciate you listening today. Michael Blank, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm thrilled to have you on the show. Please tell me a little bit, you have a beautiful comeback story, this idea about how you sort of hit sort of rock bottom and then rebuilt yourself. So just give me a little bit of background about kind of where you come from and some of your highs and lows.
Yeah, so I don't know how much time you have, but I'll give it to you in a nutshell, Jacob. So, I was taught to get good grades and get a good job, and that's what I did. I got into software, and I was in the right time, right place. I joined a software startup in the late 90s, and we had a software IPO in March 2000, put a bunch of money in my pocket. And my idea was to be a CEO of a software company. And then I read Rich Dad Poor Dad in 2004. And I was like, I'm such an idiot. it's not how much money you have in the bank. It's how much passive income I was deriving. And I was getting like interest and dividends, which were like minimal. And so after some major hemming and hawing, I was like, I'm just going to throw it all away. I'm going to pursue this dream of passive income. And I did everything at once because I had some money in the bank. So I quit and I flipped some houses. I took an apartment building boot camp, and I learned how to trade stocks and options. But my big idea was restaurants, because I was surrounded by a bunch of Five Guys burger franchisees, and they're like, oh, it costs this much to open. You hire a guy to run everything, and you sit back and you count your money. I was like, this is great. That's exactly what Robert Kiyosaki teaches. So that's what I did. I hired a guy, and I got into a different franchise. At the time, it was a pizza franchise, and life was great. I was in a state of semi-retirement for like 4 years. And then that kind of turned into a nightmare. So long story short, I ended up losing my software IPO millions in the restaurant experiment and clawed my way out with real estate. And the only thing I knew how to do was flip houses. I didn't have any more money.
Let's go back for a few moments here. So what was the mindset that you needed to leave this conventional world of, again, it's a fascinating idea, because here, I guess maybe it shows the downsides of education, in the sense that you could spend 18 to, you went to college also, so it's, to 22 years of you start in 7th grade, something like that, but you have these many, many years of education. You read one book and suddenly your whole plan for all of your life is out the window. And it was like you were already successful. So what were some character traits that you think that you had, or that you advise people to have, to allow them to sort of have that mindset to make this shift into something that is going to be more passive income, or actually going to grow wealth, as opposed to be, determined on how many hours you're actually working, or, your connection to the company?
Yeah, let me say this. I didn't get a lot of support for my decision, because on the surface, or even to some depth, it didn't make a lot of sense, because I was really giving up a pretty good gig there. What I discovered, though, especially in the latter days of the software, is that I was actually an entrepreneur. And I didn't know that because I was never surrounded by other entrepreneurs. My dad is, lifetime, IBMer. All my relatives were employees. I had no idea. So I was in my early 30s until I finally was waking up to the idea that I was actually an entrepreneur. That's really what lit me up. And so that, and then the realization that passive income, financial freedom is really required. is what I wanted. I wanted to provide my family on the one hand, but I wanted to control my time as well. And I realized I had a bunch of money, and I figured I probably had enough money for 5, 6, maybe 7 years, but that's not like permanent. So that's just why I wanted to, as much as I want to do software and stuff like that, I really wanted permanent financial freedom. And that's really, so the realization on the one hand that I was an entrepreneur coupled with financial freedom, that's kind of what propelled me to take this course of action.
And so, and most people, I'm saying this is obvious, but most people don't think like that because the idea of having a stable job, I guess, and so is like such a good security blanket that no one figures out that, oh, I might need more money than what's going to be in my retirement, or my retirement's not actually, worked out and everything like that. So you had that foresight to see that I need something that's actually kicking off money to me in order for me to actually consider myself stable, I guess.
That's right, but more and more people are coming to that realization, and they're normally in their mid-30s, kind of like I was. They've been working for 15, 20 years, and like, man, this is kind of a grind, and I got to work another 20, 25 years. They're like, this is insane. Meanwhile, I'm missing my children grow up. Like, this is what people, they're mid-30s, that's what they come to the realization, and then that's when they start thinking real estate. They're like, wow, financial freedom, real estate, right? But they're thinking like single-family house landlording or flipping, but they don't realize that those things actually, the chance of them actually achieving financial freedom with those strategies are actually very, very low. Meanwhile,
wait. So I want to get that. I want to finish your story, then I want to get back into that because I know I'm going to go with that also. So finish up. So you lose. You're not finish up. Take all the time you need. But so you end up losing a lot of money in the restaurant business.
All of it. Essentially.
What are you telling yourself? You're like mid-30s, late 30s at this point.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, what I'm telling myself is I'm such an idiot. What would have happened if I, stayed at my job? And some other people are saying the same thing. And but at the time it was, I'll tell you, it was pretty painful. However, let me say this though. It was apparently very necessary for me for forming my character because I've grown up Christian all my life, but I really never exercised my faith. I never had to because everything was all hunky-dory, right, all the time. All of a sudden, things were not hunky-dory. And what was happening is it wasn't just a constant, well, it kind of was a constant spiral, but it happened in steps, right? You get into something in a restaurant, like, oh, it can't get any worse than that. And then you become angry, you're in denial. Eventually, sort of, you kind of accept it because you can't change it. And then the bottom drops out again. And the same thing happens over and over again. And while this is going on, there's a few things I learned, Jacob. One is I don't control anything, right? That to me was very hard because I controlled everything and someone else controls everything. And so there was a certain degree of surrender. And once I did that, my next lesson was that I needed to be at peace with the situation regardless of what happened, which was a very painful thing because there were some painful things happening for me. So it really strengthened my faith considerably during this time. So by the time the crap really hit the fan, I was actually relatively calm.
That's amazing. So I want to look into that also for a few seconds. The idea of, I think, and in ways it's almost a contrarian in the sense that we might look at passive income as a way to, again, I'm a rabbi, so I think about these things often. But there's this idea that we depend on God for our daily bread and for kind of, that whole concept. And then the idea of passive income for a lot of people is saying like, well, maybe I can just provide for myself everything. And then the flip side is that you're saying that you really took off in that direction once everything started to fall apart. To a certain extent, do you think that if you didn't have that faith, you would have not come out the way that you did?
So, but here's the thing. I developed that faith through the process. I didn't go in. I thought I did because, you go to church and you're, whatever, but I didn't actually have the faith. And it was evidenced by the fact that I was extremely stressed out. I had the uncanny ability to worry. It was literally one of my core strengths. I could worry, I could have 25,000 different ways things can go wrong. And I've been cured of this now, but I did not have the faith going, and it was developed over time.
So you're saying faith is a very practical thing in terms of how much your internal calmness and quietness that you have, that's really the biggest evidence of your faith, not necessarily how much time you sat and been a part of, a service or something like that, but it's just how you feel on the inside.
Yeah, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, but whether they're Christian or some other religion, or they have a certain degree amount of faith, because otherwise entrepreneurs step out on a ledge all the time. That's the definition of entrepreneur. So they must have faith in something, and I certainly had faith in God, but I had probably more faith in me, to be honest with you. And so what I learned throughout this process is that there's actually a God who loves me. And there's, I think there's some kind of a Chinese proverb. It all turns out well in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end. Right. And so that's kind of the lesson I started learning. Well, if things are not well right now, because God's going to take care of me somehow, I don't see it right now, it's going to be okay. And I should just just be calm and see kind of what develops. And I did not have that kind of confidence moving in. I was for sure that my life, would end, my house would be gone, my family would be gone, and I'd be living under a bridge, and so I did not have that confidence.
The Job story. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that fascinating. I love that. So you're saying by the time things actually fall apart, you are in, I don't want to call it a Zen state, but you are completely living with faith. And as things fall apart, you know that it's going to come back.
Yeah, that's right. But, I had to be stripped of all that. Apparently, I had a very a huge attachment to money. I didn't think I did, but I apparently did. I had a huge attachment to control, and that needed to be all stripped to me, right? So I was essentially taught complete surrender is really what it was, because I had nothing more to lose at this point. What option do you have, right?
How were you? You were married. You had kids back then?
I got four. I have four. Yeah, four. Okay. 11 to 17. 2 boys, okay. 2 girls.
Okay, great. So as you are, and I also as a father of 4 kids, there's a, it's like if you were 19 in your mom's basement or whatever it might be, and you're losing everything, you're like, fine. How did you keep your marriage afloat and your kids normal while you were going through such horrific stress?
Yeah. So I got to credit my wife for that. She's a rock. She's very calm. She's like, you're going to do fine. We're going to be fine. Do the best you can, kind of thing, right? So that was her. And
so marry well is your advice.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely married up.
Okay.
Her faith innately. She grew up Catholic, but her faith apparently is just out of the box, or so, just higher. And there's just another example that some people are just the way they are, and some people are different. And in my case, my faith had not been developed, and it had to be developed. But her faith was always like, everything's going to be fine, everything's going to be cool. Do the best you can and relax.
Amazing. Okay, great. So now what? Now the money's gone, and you know how to flip houses.
Yeah, I knew how to flip houses. So, and I developed the art of raising money because I didn't have any. And so we flipped like 3 dozen houses in 2.5 years, and it was great. Made a lot of good money, but it kind of allowed me to get out of that situation. But it was a lot of work. I had my team in place, but still, if I couldn't take a month off if I wanted to, or work from somewhere else. I had to be there to a large degree, and so I got into
what years were these, by the way?
This is going to be in 2009 to 2012.
Okay. Oh wow! Okay, so it's right during the exciting time in our country.
Exciting time in the country, and it was just a huge, amount of foreclosures. But the retail market was getting better, so it was this giant hole. You can buy a house at 80, put in 30, and then sell it for 150, and it was great. And so I took advantage of that, but I had to learn to raise the art of. I had to learn how to raise money, and then a giant light bulb went off. Oh my gosh, I could actually do something without my own money, and by leveraging other people's money. That was major. I got into an apartment building, and it not nearly as exciting as flipping houses, but the apartment building's quietly sending me mailbox money, and the houses, once I sell it, the money stops flowing. So I was like, man, this is insanity. Like I'm still chasing financial freedom, right? And I still haven't found it yet, because if I don't flip another house next month, I'm not going to eat. So I'm like, man. So now I'm working for myself, check, but this is insanity, right? And so I was like, man, I got to do something. I was like, well, maybe I'll just instead of selling them, I'll hold them. So I'll create a portfolio of houses. Well, if I want like $10,000 a month of income, and each house generates $200 a month, which by the way is a stretch in almost any market, I need like 50 houses. I'm like, I just did 3 dozen. That's like, I'm not doing that. Why don't I just get more of these apartment buildings? Like, what's entailed with that? And I started to pivot, and I started a blog around this. And then I started creating an analyzer, and people started buying that. And it's just
was there a level of terror, I guess you could say, or fear, because when you're speaking about a single family home and then you switch over to an apartment, obviously, there's a lot more investment that has to be raised. So
significant amount of terror. Yeah, significant amount of terror.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
and even I remember distinctly, putting this 12 unit under contract. That was in Washington D.C. and it just looked really big to me. It was just this 3-story brick building. It was substantially bigger than the houses I was flipping, and I was just really, really nervous about the whole thing. But what I found is after about 10 days of being really nervous, but I spent time there. I talked to people about it. I all of a sudden my confidence level increased and my comfort zone expanded. And after like 10 days, I'm like, daggone it, this is a lot of work. I wish this thing were bigger.
So
Because
that's fascinating. I mean, it's amazing that you said that, because I'm drawing parallels a lot of times in the realm of, like, if a person wants to change their diet, they have to, it's like you make that change and then it's like terrible for 3 days. And then by the end of like day 4 or 5, you're not craving any of the old stuff anymore.
Right.
It's just that matter of getting over that hump of the 3 days. And so you're saying the same thing is true in terms of business, in terms of raising capital, that you will be like, oh my gosh, but that'll go off after 10 days. And then you're just kind of swimming in bigger waters.
Oh, it's a great way to hack your comfort zone. So all you do is if your comfort zone is, let's say, at 10 units or whatever the comfort zone is, you start visiting 25, 50 units. You just kind of tour them. You just call up the broker, and then you start touring this, and you do this a couple of times. You're like, 10 units, that's ridiculous. I'm going to 30 units, right? And it's a great way to hack your comfort zone without having to do a bunch of single family houses.
Amazing. Okay, great. So now you're looking at these apartments. You have this big building in Washington D.C. Then what happens?
Well, so this is all going on. Like I said, I start blogging about it because I just I have this vacation house, the one thing left over from my IPO heyday. Then of course I leveraged it to open up another restaurant, so you know where that's going. Anyway, so I planted a bamboo grove, and I love bamboo. It's like my favorite plant. So during this time, this was now in 2013. When it was really bad, I'm losing $10,000 a month, and I'm almost out of my, I had like $200,000 a line of credit, and I was almost out of it. Like no more cash, no more credit, and that was really bad because then I can't pay the people. They would quit, and I can't even sell what I have. So I spent a lot of time reflecting in the bamboo, and I get the very strong sensation that I needed to share my experiences with other people to prevent some major mistakes and to accelerate the process of that.
How did that come from the bamboo?
Well, okay, it comes from bamboo. It comes from a lot of praying and reading and meditating, okay? I got the very strong sensation every time I thought about the idea of blogging and teaching about it. I got more and more excited because actually every time I did that, I light up. Like I love teaching. I just never realized that I loved teaching because I don't pay attention to these things apparently. But the more I thought about it, the more excited I got about the idea of blogging about it and possibly having seminars someday or something like that. The only problem with God's plan was it was a really bad business plan, because I knew studying this that if you're going to do that, if you're going to do this stuff online or sell anything, you need a list. Well, that's going to take you 2 or 3 years if you're lucky. But I had a problem now. But I found is, and I did it anyway. I just did it in like blind faith because I felt very strongly this is my path forward. And so I started blogging on the Bigger Pockets. I put up my own website. People downloaded my free ebook. And the response was just unbelievably overwhelming, right? So I started getting investors, I started getting deals, and within like a year, I'm making like 6 figures off this whole thing, like the deals and the education and this, that, and the other thing. And it was so stark, Jacob, that there's no way I could take credit for that. Like it was like so accelerated.
I want to point out though that the practical component of that is that you took this risk of kind of sharing your story without the recognition of where it might go. But, so often there's so many people out there that do have, experience. And the amazing thing also is, and I'm thinking about a client right now as I say this, so she teaches moms about how to, kind of start a home business. And she feels like, well, if it was bankrolling, millions of dollars a month, then I would really be, but you're saying like, no, you came at a time when actually you were stretched to your max. And you were because you still had the relevant experience, even if it wasn't turning around great at that moment, you sort of knew what to do, or at least how to get started. And that was the big accelerant that really pushed you and changed everything for you.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. But I think more fundamentally, what changed inside me is that I stopped thinking about myself and I started thinking about how can I help others. Right. That was my main realization. It can't just be about me and let's say my family, but that's not really a very selfless thing. Okay. Because your family is still kind of you. And I think that shifted. And as I talk to people who have been through similar experiences, they come out with the same thing. Like there's a degree of surrender and it was like, I got to help other people. Like I got to help. And so I think doing that just fundamentally kind of just changes things when you're doing things, you're trying to help other people and you're like, man, I think it'll help me, just intuitively, but you don't know that. You don't do it because of that.
That's such a clear path to profit. I mean, that's always the most painful thing. And something I always tell people, it's like, look, if you're going to start a podcast, if you're going to start teaching, like that shouldn't be like, I'm going to be netting a lot of money out of that every month. Do it because you love it. Do it because you want to share with someone else. But like, that's not your exit strategy, at least initially.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Amazing. So what happens?
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing leads to another, right? So today we're one of the leading, educators in apartment buildings. If you type in apartment building investing, I'm all over page one now. And that's great. We have live events, we have mentoring, and then we also do our own deals. We partner with our students. We have this deal desk where people can find deals, bring it to us, and we'll partner with them and raise the money for it. And it's my mission really is to help people become financially free with real estate. And so I know that if I can help someone do their first deal, the second and third will follow in rapid, almost automatic succession, and they will have covered the living expenses. And I know this because I talk to so many people on my podcast, and this is why I wrote the book around this. What I call the law of the first deal is so powerful that I don't need to show you how many units you need to quit your job. I just need to show you how to do one deal. Everything else will follow automatically. And for most people, almost like 95% of people, from the time they truly decide they want to get into this stuff, they'll be financially free within 1 or 2 years. Now I say 3 to 5 years, but no one takes that long. It's so powerful. Even if you start with a duplex, with a apartment building mindset, because what happens if you start with a duplex, because of this expanding comfort zone we talked about, the second deal will be around 10 units. The third deal will be around 25 units, and then it'll be 50 plus. And most people, if you're starting with a duplex, you're probably not going to try to replace $10,000 in monthly expenses. If you have $10,000 in expenses, you're probably making 120, 150 a year. You're probably not starting with a duplex. You're probably going to start with like a 20 unit. Well, then you do a 20, a 50, and 100, and you're done, right? You've got more than 10,000.
Just to clarify what you're saying, and I think that the real estate space is, again, and maybe again, just because I'm Jewish and I live in California and I know people in New York, but the real estate space for a lot of people is very intimidating for a bunch of different reasons. One of it is that there's this concept that there is so much initial investment that you have to have set aside, which you're saying that's something that is not true.
That's
correct?
Right. That's right. That's the main objection, followed closely by, I don't have any experience.
Exactly. Right. I don't, once you're dealing with tons, I mean, that's the natural outcome of these big numbers. It's like, okay, I'll invest $500 in Bitcoin because, like, who cares if I lose that? But it's like, if I'm leveraged, I'm going to have a loan of, a couple $1 million. Like I can't afford to lose that. So how do you work that component out?
Yeah, but the first thing is the money part, right? So yes, you require more money, but you said I think you said something like, I need to have a lot of money set aside.
Set aside, so correct.
That implies that it's your money. I mean, that's a fundamental thing in shifting. So yes, you need money set aside, but no one says it's got to be your own. Well, then where's it going to come from? Well, it's going to come from other people. Well, what other people? Right? These are going to be people who have a different problem than you do. These are high net worth, high income earners who have a lot of money and no time. And they want the same thing, by the way, as you do, which is they want to get out of their job. They want to get out of their law practice. They want to get out of their clinic that they're in because they're burning out. They just happen to have a lot of money. And their problem is they can't get a good, consistent, low volatile return on their money, stock market, and they're paying too many taxes. So they have a different problem that you can help them with, because you can give them a consistent return with a lower risk, and they will hardly pay any taxes on that return. So you're actually solving a problem for them. And most people are like, oh, I don't feel comfortable in taking money. You're like, well, I don't want to beg people for money. But it's exactly the opposite. And so once you get the taste of that, like I did, the light bulb moment goes out, my gosh, I can do stuff without actually having the resources myself, by essentially syndicating these things together. And this is what we do as entrepreneurs all the time. Entrepreneurs make something happen out of nothing, out of thin air. I have no deal, no money. All of a sudden, 6 months go by, I have a deal with money, and it's amazing. And all of a sudden, I'm creating value for everybody. I'm creating value for myself and for my investors, and that's really powerful.
Well, I think that idea is so fundamental, because I think that a lot of times this idea of something from nothing, I mean, I think that real estate's an amazing example that Peter Thiel has that book that was of all of the self-help books, the most academic I think I've read, of 0 to 1, where he goes through, creating out of nothing. But the reality is, especially if you're looking at real estate, you're not really creating out of nothing. Meaning, if I feel like I have to produce something that's truly original, it's overwhelming. But that's not what we're doing over here. We are just kind of seeing a pathway or putting together two parties that are already in existence. The attorney that has the money but doesn't have the freedom, he's over here, and the apartment building that needs to be purchased is over there. And you are just, I guess, developing the tools to see the connection between the two and putting them together. That's sort of what you're saying.
Exactly right. Yeah, you're putting the pieces together.
Okay. And that's something that you say is something that that's what you teach people to do, is just putting pieces together.
That's right. Exactly.
It's unbelievable. So if you're going to go from a complete real estate novice to someone that's comfortable to going into doing your first deal, using your program, using your tutelage, what does that process look like? How long does it take? What do I have to have, before I go into it? What do I want, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So that brings us to the second point. I don't have any experience, and the way you overcome that is by educating yourself. This is again why I wrote the book Financial Freedom with Real Estate Investing, is because it shows you how to overcome those two major objections, and it shows you the process of actually going out, finding a deal, raising money, and closing the deal. Because I find that once someone can visualize the process to some degree of depth, they start to believe that this is something they can do. Now, if someone decides this is right for them, that this is something in the realm of possibility, at that point, they have to invest in themselves, right? The education is out there. I offer it. There's other people that offer it out there. But you solve this problem by educating yourself, not by flipping houses or landlording for 10 years, but by educating yourself. And what happens is, in doing so, you develop a certain language. So when you call up a broker, you have a language that identifies you as someone who's an insider, someone who's in the know, versus sound like someone like who's a newbie. The second thing that you learn through the process is that you have to build your team. This is especially important if you don't have any track record. So when you call up a broker and you say, my name is Michael, and I go on and on about my lack of experience, well, they're going to ask you, hey, this is great, Michael. Why don't you send me your proof of funds and I'll send you more information. Right. And they say that because you sound like a newbie and they want you to go away, which you will probably do. You're like, oh gosh, I don't have a proof of funds. What am I going to do? Versus if you call them up and you say, oh, I'm working with Sam over here who manages 5,000 units in Atlanta. Oh, Sam's a great guy. I've known him for years. And so also now we're talking about Sam, who he knows. And now we're talking about his experience, not about you. Oh, I'm working with closing attorney so-and-so. Oh, Frank, he's great. Yeah, I've done a bunch of deals with him as well. So really, before you start calling brokers or going out investors, just build your team. Well, how long does that take?
If I could just stop you on that, I think that's what you said is such an important point, because a lot of times we try to find like a soft way in, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, like let me be a manage apartments, for 10 years. And then, but the problem is, it's like, that's still not going to get you over that first hump, which is, becoming someone that's able to put these deals together. So that the only way to do that is by education. And then this idea of, and I guess you're talking about helping with this, building a network of trust so that the people that you're working with can know that you are reputable also.
Absolutely. It's all about the team. Okay. And even if you're experienced, everyone that's experienced has an experienced team around them, but it's much more important, especially when you're starting off.
Okay. Amazing. And then what?
Look at that. Everything else at that point is almost secondary, right? Okay. It's almost secondary because the first thing is you have to be able to believe that this is something that you can do. Because if you don't do that, then I can tell you all the mechanics of finding and closing deals. You're not even listening right now. So you have to, in your mind, you have to know, oh my gosh, I can do this. I can do this. And once you've done that, now it's just a matter of educating yourself. And when you do that, you will learn how to raise money. There's a system for raising money. You will learn how to find deals. There's a system for finding deals. You will learn how to analyze deals, how to make offers. There's systems and tools for that. You learn how to close a deal. You'll learn how to hire a manager, fire a manager. All these things are very important, not nearly as important as the first two steps.
That idea, when did you have that moment for yourself when you felt like, oh, I could actually do this?
Yeah, I mean, that's good. I mean, everything comes in stages, right? But I'll tell you, if someone sat me down in 2007 or 8 or 9, instead of me getting into restaurants, now this would have been before the recession. However, multifamily specifically did extremely well during the recession. So even had I got into apartments before the recession, I would have done much, much better, right? So if someone would have sat me down, Michael, you're being an idiot. Great franchises and great restaurants, whatever, wow. But you know what? Apartment buildings. So that's an advanced strategy. Yeah, but you just get some training, raise the money. What do you mean raise the money? How can you do that? Oh, well, here's how it works. And I was like, oh my gosh, had someone done that, I probably would have not done the restaurant stuff, but no one sat me down, right? There was at the time very, very few resources And so when I noticed that, and of course I did the restaurants and then did flipping houses. So I didn't get the thing of raising money until much later because I had to. So that's what I'm saying. So this is why my mission is to kind of educate the average real estate investor who goes to these meetings every single month, thinking they can get out of the rat race.
There you have it, folks. Another inspiring episode. If you enjoyed this, I ask you to please share this with your friends and to like us over on Rabbi Rupp through Facebook or on YouTube. And the more that we're able to get these important messages out, the more that we can really make an impact in the world. So I encourage you, please, to stay tuned. We have a ton of amazing speakers coming up, and also to tell your friends about it. Thank you very much. But in terms of other kinds of commercial, you still feel very comfortable that multifamily is the way to go. Why is that? And is that reflective of the market conditions today, or is this like you're not worried what's going to be basically that this is the way to go forward if you want to set yourself up, at least in real estate, to have financial freedom? That's exactly right. I've studied this at great length, but multifamily is the best at any time in the world, unless you want to play the market. If you are smart enough to time the market for certain things and you get them on an upswing, which I'm not that smart, okay, then you might want to consider something else. But look at this. Look at the recession. So single family houses got slammed, right? Office slammed. Retail slammed, right? Let's see. And then we moved into apartments. And then we moved into apartments. Now, mobile home parks are actually fairly recession-proof. So, but that's not my style, okay? A lot of people do mobile home parks. I just don't love it. Then there's self-storage. But if you study self-storage, you're doing two things. It's actually a business and a real estate. Because making money in self-storage is all about the operation of it. Versus apartment buildings is like 10%. It is operations, but there's so many professional managers out there that for me as a syndicator, it's more like a 90% real estate play, because once I find a good property manager, I can kind of go to sleep. We can't do it with the self-storage. It's very, very, very difficult to hire third-party management companies that will actually manage your property. So that's why I don't do self-storage either. So those are all there's light industrial, and I don't know much about light industrials, to be honest with you. So it may be great, but warehouses, that kind of stuff. So that's just why multifamily for the average, is not even for the average. It's the best asset class. Amazing. Where do you see your? I guess you set up. So many Americans and people in general, are just trying to figure out, how do I have a plan that when I'm old and can't work anymore, there's going to be money. So you've set that part up for yourself, that you've built a nest, you've built, that will set you up, set up your family, etc. What's next? What's on the other side of that? Like you're still driven. You're not off playing golf all day long, even if you could, or whatever you like doing. What drives you, and where do you see your business or your mission going in the future? All right. So what drives me is helping people become financially free. Now the question is why? Why is that important? What I observe, the reason that's important, because I think we're all called to do something specific, some purpose in our lives. And that's, if we find that purpose, our life is going to be the most fulfilled because it lights us up in the morning. The problem is, if you're working 50 hours a week, it's very difficult for, number one, you to be clear about what you really love to do and to be able to do something about it, right? So when you have a conversation, hey, Paul, you should really reflect and see what your true passion is and your purpose. Like, what are you talking about, Michael? I'm working 50 plus hours a week. Okay. I come home drained, put the kids to bed, fall asleep in front of the TV and do it again tomorrow. What in your earth are you talking about? Right. So I observed I can't have a conversation around significance with people who are working full time. Yes. For a matter of simple, my head is consumed. And even if I decided that, I love woodworking and my passion is to be a woodworker, I can't do it anyway because I have to provide for my family. So to me, financial freedom is a key ingredient to living a life of significance. Now, even if you look at people like Mother Teresa, well, she was financially free. Why? Because she had someone covering her living expenses. Correct. It wasn't through real estate, okay? But how can she do that if she wasn't covering the living expenses? Which is such an important thing that nobody thinks about. Is it's like, I don't need money to do X, Y, and Z, because look at this person. It's like, well, that person, they're not worried about that because they either don't have those expenses or someone's covering them. Right. Money is super important. Love of money, maybe not so much, but money is very, very important. And at a minimum, you have to cover your living expenses by some means, right? So you can either have a job or you can have passive income coming from real estate. I was having a conversation with someone just the other day, and he was really, really passionate about an inner city project he was working on. Every waking moment he goes down and works on it, but he's working. Now, and he was specifically, his strategy was he actually had some money.
And so his strategy was to invest passively in these syndications because passive investors get a return on their money as well. And the passive investor wants the same thing that we do as the syndicators, just a different route. I happen to have money. I'm going to get a 10% return or 15% return on my money. And if I do enough of it, I've covered my living expenses. So his strategy was just to start plowing his money into these multifamily investments so that the passive income could then cover his living expenses so he can serve full time.
That's right.
Very, very powerful. And the idea is if enough people become financially free, the world might be a better place.
Because they're not going to be operating out of a position of desperation or a position of not thinking, but they actually can sort of structure their life. Beautiful. Okay, Michael, I want to be very respectful of your time. Thank you so much. Tell me how people can find out more about you, about the amazing work you're doing, seminars, etc.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I'm at themichaelblank.com. That's THE, and then Michael, BLANK is my last name, or just Google apartment building investing. You'll find me. We have so much free information out there. We have a podcast, we have a YouTube channel, and we have some paid programs. We have live events. So we have the book, of course, great entry and just kind of, thinking if this is something that for people. So that's how people can find me.
Amazing, Michael. Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it.
There you have it, folks, another inspiring episode. If you enjoyed this, I ask you to please share this with your friends and to like us over on Rabbi Rupp through Facebook or on YouTube. And the more that we're able to get these important messages out, the more that we can really make an impact in the world. So I encourage you, please, to stay tuned. We have a ton of amazing speakers coming up, and also to tell your friends about it. Thank you very much.